Dear students, due to the adverse situation of lockdown and COVID-19, we are unable to take our regular classes in school. That's why our school, Satish Chandra Memorial, has organized some online classes for you. Next year, you are going to give the board examination, so don't waste your time and start preparing yourself. You know that your SST subject is divided into 4 parts, that is geography, history, economics and civics. I am going to conduct the geography classes for you. Today we will start with our first chapter, that is resource and development. What is resource? Resource is a thing or object which is needful and useful for us. For example, you are using a use and throw pen. So until there is ink inside the pen, it is resource to you. But once the ink will finish, it is no more resource to us. So we can define the resource, everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs. And provided it is technologically accessible, that means we need to use technology to use the resource. Economically feasible, that means economic development also related with that resource. And culturally acceptable, that means everyone will accept that things or object as a resource. We can term the object as a resource. Next, the human beings on the earth's surface is mostly related with this resource. There are 3 ways through which the human beings are related or interconnected with the resource. First of all, we get the resource mostly from the nature. After that, human beings use the technology to access the resources, and then we make the institution or create institution for the development of the country or to access the resource in this way that it can be used for our economical benefit. Okay. Next, we will go for the different types of resources. First of all, on the basis of origin, that means from where we are getting the resource. On the basis of origin, resources are 2 types. First of all, biotic resource, that means the resource which we are getting directly from the nature and which has a life. Like for example, the flora, fauna, etc. And the abiotic resource, these are also we are getting from the nature, but these resources don't have any life, like the rocks, minerals, etc. Next, these are some factors, biotic and abiotic factors. Next. Now, on the basis of exhaustibility, means how long we can use the resource or we can remake the resource or not. First of all, renewable resources. If you follow the word renewable, that means we can make the resource again and again. Which are those resources? Like the solar energy, wind energy, hydroelectricity. This resource we can make again and again. But the non-renewable, that means this resource we cannot make again and again. These resources has limited stock on the earth's surface. That's why, for example, suppose the non-renewable like coal, petroleum, fossil fuels. So these are non-renewable. These are made within the earth surface by the nature. That's why it takes too long time to remain. And we human beings cannot make this resource. Next, here is some example of renewable resources and some example of non-renewable resources. Now, on the basis of ownership, means who is the owner of this resource. If we go for individual resource, that means the resource which is your own, like your bag, your books, your pen, that is your own individual resource. Next is community, that means the group of people can use it. It is community based resource. For example, a park beside your house, that is community. It is not your own resource. A pond, that is also community resources. Okay. Next is national resource. The national resource which are taken or undertaken by the government. That means these are government property. Like our national highways. These are national resource. Next, some international resource. That means not only one continent or one country is the owner of that particular resources. For example, ocean. An ocean beyond 200 kilometers from one coast or one country will consider or is considered as the international property. That means that portion of the resource is not only used by a single country or a continent. Other countries or continent also have the right over that part of the ocean. Next. These are some examples of individual, these are community based, national resource like our train, national highways, these are national resource, and international resources. Next. Now, on the basis of development, here also we will get some 4 types of resource. Let's start with the first one. The first one is the potential resource. These 4 resources on the basis of development are almost equal. What are these 4 types? Potential resource, developed resource, stock, and reserve. First of all, if we go for potential resource, this resource, we know that this resource is present within us. Suppose for example here given wind and solar energy, if we give one example of Rajasthan, there we can get enormous amount of wind and solar energy. But due to lack of technology, still we are unable to use that resource to its highest amount. That's why it is called potentiality. That means this resource has the potentiality, but we are unable to use that resource. Next, we are going for developed resource. These resources are also surveyed. We know that how much amount of these resources are present with us, but still due to inaccessibility of the technology, or maybe that region is not appropriate to use that resource, we call it the developed resource. Next. Next is stock. What is stock? Stock means what we say, that which is we kept for our future, for stock. So for this resource, I am giving first the example. You give the example, take the example of water. We know that which gases are present or which gases form water. But still now, we don't have that much of developed technology that we will make water. So for this resource, we know what are the origin of this resource, but we cannot make this resource. That's why we call it stock. That maybe in future, we can make these resources. And the last one, that is the reserve resource. Reserves are the subset of stock which are yet to be put into use with the help of existing technical know-how. This can be used for meeting future requirements. For example, river water can be used for generating hydrological power. but not in all the places. Same point again, due to the lack of technology. That's why on the basis of development we can divide these four kind of resource which are interrelated to one another. Next. Now, as our resource or the natural resources are limited, but our population and our demand are increasing day by day. That's why we can observe that there is indiscriminate use of resource. For that, what kind of problem we are facing? First of all, many of the resources are getting depleted, like many flora and fauna. Some of the animals and plants already they have extinct, and some are at the verge of extinction due to our behavior. Next, for the indiscriminate use of resource, we can observe that mainly on the earth, the rich people, they have the access to most amount of resources, whereas the poor people cannot access it. And with this problem, many severe problems are also attached, like global warming, some environmental degradation, ozone layer depletion, etc. Next, now how can we conserve these resources? How can we protect our resources for ourselves, for our earth? So first of all, we need to follow the Sustainable Development Plan. What is the main concept of this method, sustainable development? This method is telling that you use your resource. Whatever resource you need to fulfill your demand, you use it. But you don't waste the resource. We need to use the resource in this way that we can save this resource for our future generation. Because if we will not think about them, then who will think for them? That is the main concept of sustainable development. Next, to conserve the resource, another important point is there, that is proper resource planning. The resource planning, it has 3 steps. Number 1, identification of the resource. That means we need to focus that in which area, which resources are present, what are their importance, what amount of resource are there, and how can we use that. Number 2, we need proper planning. That means we need to use advanced technology, need to create some institution, need to apply our skill to use the resource in proper way. And the last step is that is match the resource development plan with our national development plan. That means we have to plan the resource in this way that our nation or our economy also get benefited with the plan. Next. Now, what are some importance, or why should we go for the resource planning? Because the resources on the earth's surface are distributed unevenly. Some portions are rich in different kinds of resource and some areas are deficit with that. So we need to create a proper balance for both the region or both the places. For example, you can take that in Rajasthan, there is very less amount of water, but the area is rich in solar energy and wind energy. So if we can supply water to Rajasthan from other region, suppose from Gangetic Plain region, and if we can take the help of solar energy or wind energy from Rajasthan to other state, so that state can get beneficial for that, and the Rajasthan will also get beneficial. So this way we need to keep the balance of resources within the states or within different places. Another example, like Madhya Pradesh is rich in different kinds of minerals, whereas our Ladakh, that we call cold desert, this region culturally very much good, but the region lack of different kinds of important minerals. So here is also a chance that from excessive resource the state which have, if we can supply this resource to this state which are deficient in resources. This way we need to keep the balance. Also, with the resource planning, we can reduce the wastage of resources, the environmental pollution can be reduced, and also people can get aware for the proper use of the resource. Next. Now, for the resource conservation, why it is necessary? Because at first only I said that resources, they have some limited amount. We cannot make again and again some of our natural resources like the fossil fuels. So with this limited amount, we need to go for long way. That's why we need the resource conservation. And also for our future generation, to reduce the wastage of resource, we need the resource conservation. Next, for the conservation of resources, Gandhiji had given some valuable words. What are these? According to him, there is enough resource for everyone need, but not for anybody's greed. So you cannot use the resource to fulfill your greed. You use it as much as you need. Greedy and selfish individuals and the exploitive nature of modern technology. So Gandhiji also had said that sometimes our modern technology is also exploiting our resources. And he was also against the mass production and wanted to replace it with production by the masses. He wanted that the production, that means whatever production we are getting from the resource, as much as people should be attached with this work, that they can also be beneficial with this work. So today we have discussed that what is resource, what are the importance of resource in our life, what are different types of resource, how day by day due to our behavior the resource are getting depleted, and how can we conserve the resource for us as well as for future generation. You keep continue with this first chapter, resource and development. In the next class, I will come back with the second part of this chapter. Thank you.